Is there any evidence for any gods? No, at least not so far. Is there evidence that the religious are delusional? Absolutely. There's no denying that. So are we going to get the former today, or are we going to get the latter? The odds seem to suggest the delusional bit, but hey, let's go take a look and see. We could be wrong. And pigs might fly out of my ass, you never know. So we're going to look at Pastor Michael Grant, who popped up in my feed with, "Is there evidence for the existence of God?" And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, no, but hey, what do I know, right? I haven't seen the video yet, and I might have to give him the benefit of the doubt, except we've seen thousands of these things, and every single one of them has been bad. So will this just be more of the same? I don't know. Let's go watch. Don't get your hopes up because, religion. So away we go.
Hello and thank you for watching. Is there proof for the existence of God? I believe that there is, and in this video we're going to be looking at 3 pieces of evidence for the existence of God, and it's very simple.
Hey, at least you didn't say evidences, so I guess that's something. Now, we know that he's not going to give any actual evidence here because none of them ever do. He'll get his chance, of course, but they don't understand what evidence is. Evidence, by its very nature, has to be something that you can show to someone else such that they can examine it for themselves without having to have a pre-existing belief in anything about it first. That's where most of this goes wrong. Secondly, it has to point directly to a particular conclusion. It can't be something that a Christian will say, "That's God," and a Muslim will say, "That's Allah," and a Hindu will say, "That's Krishna," after having the exact same evidence presented. Third, the conclusion must be demonstrable. You have to be able to put the evidence to the test. You can't just say, "But I like it," as if that matters, because it doesn't. Nobody cares what you want to be true. So with those in mind, I think we know that he's not going to have anything that stands up to any kind of critical scrutiny. But hey, we're here already. Let's see where this goes.
Sometimes you watch these apologetic videos and there are deep philosophical arguments, but these are 3 simple pieces of evidence that there is a God and everybody knows it.
And that's going to be a problem moving forward if it means what it usually does. You don't just get to pretend that you know what other people know better than they know themselves. Fuck your stupid book. You can't simply insist that your book is true without actually proving that it is. Secondly, though, philosophical arguments will never prove that a real thing actually exists in the real world. You can't prove any God is real through philosophy. If that's where you're going, you've already lost. Give up. The reason the religious resort to philosophy is because they've got nothing else. Philosophy does nothing to demonstrate the real world. A God, if one exists, is part of or interacts with the real world. Thus, it needs science to prove that it's there, not philosophy. If you don't have the science, then you don't have anything at all. You just have faith in childish fifis, and that is never, ever, ever going to be enough. So with that all out of the way, let's see what he's got. Prepare to be vastly underwhelmed.
The first piece of evidence, the starry skies above.
Look at the trees! Yeah, this is dumber than I thought. Granted, he might finish up strong, but this doesn't prove anything at all but that there are stars or trees or whatever. That doesn't prove that a God is responsible. As I said before, the evidence needs to lead to a specific conclusion, and this one simply doesn't. There are stars. So what? That doesn't prove that any gods are involved. This is what they say when they're not talking to skeptics, which, let's be honest, they never are, right? And while we're here, let's pause for a second and look at his comments. He tells atheists to comment on his work. Then I will block you, but thanks again for your views and clicks. So he has no interest whatsoever in having an actual conversation. Why? Because he's afraid to be shown to be wrong. This guy is a prick right up front. I don't feel the need to block asshole Christians because I can defeat everything that they say. This guy, apparently, he's not very good at it, is he? And that's not really much of a surprise.
The second piece of evidence, the moral law within.
That's bullshit too. Because again, just saying you've got a moral intuition, which isn't supported by any evidence in any way, shape, or form, but hey, we can just pretend, that doesn't get you to any God. For the religious, God is just the automatic answer to any question that they don't have a really good answer for. When in doubt, God done it. But that's not how any of this works. You don't just get to jump to God done it because you really like the idea. For this to be evidence, he'd have to be able to demonstrate that his claim is verifiably true. Then he'd have to show that a real existing God is actually responsible. And how many people think he'll be able to do that? None? That's what I thought. Now, I'm sure he's going to try to justify all this down the road in some way. After all, if he doesn't, this is just going to be a really short video. So we'll just take it apart again in more detail when he gets there. Won't that be fun? No, probably not, but we're going to do it anyhow.
And the third piece of evidence is the scripture, the Bible itself.
So, you've got no evidence, do you? My book says a thing doesn't mean anything. This is empty claims and emotional assertions that get him absolutely nowhere of any value at all. The second that I saw that he was just going to ban anyone who disagreed, I pretty much knew where this was going. You have to already believe all the crap that he does, or you can't come to the conclusions that he really wants you to. He's not talking to us. He's not talking to anyone who might actually care about evidence for his imaginary friend. He's just preaching to the choir, like they all do, because he's a complete idiot. Why would you try to convince people who already believe to believe? Isn't that a complete waste of time? Yes, but this is what Christianity does. This is who they're trying to convince, and those people aren't that bright, are they?
So the first piece of evidence, the starry skies above, this is called natural revelation. So everybody knows that there is a God.
And I'll stop you right there because you're full of it. I mean, I could say everyone knows that there are invisible, intangible, star-creating pixies because, there the stars are. That doesn't get you anywhere, and anyone who believed that would be a complete moron because that isn't evidence for anything except your own gullibility. The reason these people fail so badly is because they know they've got nothing. If they could prove their gods were real, they'd have multiple Nobel Prizes, but instead they are complete laughingstocks to anybody with a brain in their heads. You can't just presume your conclusion before you can demonstrate your conclusion. But that's all the religious can do, right? Because they're really, really dumb. But we're not surprised by that or anything, are we?
We know there is a God simply by observing the creation.
That's just asserting that there is a creation without demonstrating that it's actually true. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you have faith in. It matters what you can prove. This is the problem that they always have though, right? They start with the conclusion that they really want to be true because they're emotionally attached to it, and then they build their arguments backwards, specifically so that they can get back to where they really want to go. This is fallacious thinking 101, not that they care. He's also completely betrayed his own biases and proven that he's got nothing to show a skeptic, which are the only people who actually care if there is any evidence for his imaginary friend. This is only for the delusional idiots who already believe so that they can feel all warm and fuzzy inside and keep giving this idiot money. Because that's what it's always about, right?
The creation speaks to the fact that there is a creator.
And that's just a bald assertion for which you can provide no evidential support. It's completely circular. I mean, seriously, what is wrong with these imbeciles who keep doing this and can't see where they are going wrong? It's not like they haven't had it pointed out to them time and time again, right? This is what happens when you don't pay attention, and none of these people ever do. But I really want it to be true. Good for you. It's still a joke, but if you think your feelings and faith mean more than the facts and evidence, I really don't know what to tell you. You've got something seriously wrong with you upstairs. Seek help.
Psalm 19 verse 1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork."
My book says a thing. Nobody cares until you can prove your book is actually true, and that requires independent evidence that you simply don't have. It doesn't matter what sounds good to you, it matters what you can demonstrate, and you people aren't even trying. This is where I think it's valuable to look at their abject failures, because they all do this, right? Almost every last one of them pulls this shit at some point or another, and all for the exact same reasons. They are proving just how dumb they are. They are proving what a bunch of con artists they are. They don't take the Bible seriously, no matter what they pretend, because this isn't what Matthew 28:18-20 commands them to do. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, etc., etc., etc. It doesn't say, preach to the people who already believe. It says, go convince the people who don't believe that all of this crap is true. But none of them are doing that, right? Why? Because this is all just a scam. Big surprise there.
So if you're walking down the street and you see a watch lying on the sidewalk, that watch is evidence, it's proof that there is a watchmaker.
Every time I think that he can't get any dumber, he proves me wrong. This is the kind of crap that you get from the religious. Now, I had to go and look this guy up, and trust me, with a generic name like his, that was a little difficult. His about at least helped narrow it down a little bit to the pastor at the Moore's Corner Church in Leverett, Massachusetts. Now, it's quite telling that in his about page, he's begging for money, providing his PayPal, and providing an address to send checks to his church, because that's what this is always about, isn't it? But just looking at the church, I think it's obvious what kind of bullshit he believes and preaches, since he has multiple men's services and events during the week, and absolutely nothing at all for women. So he's just an asshole. What a shock. Who didn't see that one coming, right?
Romans 1:20 says, "For since the creation of the world, his, God's, invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made." That's us.
Nobody cares. Because as I say over and over and over again, nobody who isn't already a Christian cares about what it says in your silly book. So reading us verses won't do anything but make us roll our eyes. Granted, we don't pay him, and that's really all he's interested in, which is why he's making this ridiculous video in the first place. How about try to convert the non-believers, Pastor? You know, do what your own book commands you to do. But he'd have to have things that he definitely doesn't have, and he's obviously afraid of us anyhow, which is why he's deleting most of our comments and banning us so we don't deconvert his meal ticket. And that's another thing. This guy has almost 30,000 subscribers, yet this video has only been watched 1,000 times. Why can these people not get their own subscribers to watch the videos that they make? I'm willing to bet that the majority of those views are atheists who are just laughing at this dipshit. What the hell is wrong with these people? Somebody please let me know.
Even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they, mankind, is without excuse. Every single person, deep down, we know that there is a God.
That's bullshit, but they have to lie to themselves and others because otherwise they're just gonna feel bad. Everyone has to be just like they are, and for the people who aren't, well, they are too. Just ask them. This has got to be one of the most ridiculous things that a theist could ever say, But a lot of them say it, don't they? They are so dumb that they don't even understand how dumb they are. Why is that? So I got curious again and went back to the church's website to look at pictures. But only in one does he really show how many people show up on Sunday morning, and who knows if that's typical. I was just wondering if he's like Steven Anderson, where he gets a handful of people to listen to his ridiculous screeds, but at least the church isn't in a strip mall, so I guess that's good. However, even in that picture, he's got fewer people than my old church got at random Sunday services, so really, who knows? Anyhow, that was really just an aside. Back to the religious stupidity.
Now, Romans 1 talks about how man suppresses that knowledge, and people choose instead to worship the creature rather than the creator. That's why you have paganism. I see these bumper stickers here in New England. They say, tree-hugging dirt worshiper. Well, what are these people doing? They're worshiping the creation itself rather than the creator.
Yeah, but I don't have any respect for those idiots either. Now, from here on out, if he's going to quote the Bible, we're just going to fast forward through it because my book says a thing is just laughable. He's clearly only doing this for his existing followers so he can extract the contents of their wallets. And that's not exactly a good thing, but they all do it, right? I thought he was supposed to be talking about evidence, but he isn't. He's just preaching to the choir. Here's the shit you already believe, so I don't actually have to prove anything because you're all just a bunch of dumb yokels without an operative brain cell between you. This is not how to impress anyone. It just isn't. This is why I keep pointing out that these people are ignoring the Great Commission. On purpose, I might add. They've already got most of the suckers that they're likely to fleece, and they're hanging on to them as hard as they can because otherwise they're just going to go out of business. They're not taking any of this crap seriously. If they were, they'd be doing outreach beyond their own walls and safe spaces. They don't do it because it's hard to find people dumb enough to take any of this stuff seriously these days, isn't it?
But people will worship idols, they'll worship animals, people worship other people. Sometimes people worship themselves. Even the New Age movement, teaches that you are a God. God is within you, or we are all part of the divine. Even pantheism, to some degree, teaches that, yes, we are all part of God.
And note how he doesn't mention atheists, at least not yet, although he seems to be mad at us and banning us because we're making him look bad. Atheism is the imaginary boogeyman that they make up in their heads because they can't deal with the actual reality. They don't know how to handle someone without the faith gene. Well, if you already believe one thing, maybe I can just talk you into believing mine. Nope. You can't do it. We don't believe anything without evidence, and the people who have faith, they don't care about evidence at all. They are just comforted thinking that there's some rational justification for their beliefs, even though there isn't any. So this idiot is just lying to them for a paycheck as if that's any surprise. But it really isn't, is it?
So this is the first piece of evidence that God exists. The starry skies above.
And it's crap. Because if what he said is true, then there doesn't need to be any evidence because everyone already believes because his book says a thing, no matter how stupid and demonstrably untrue that thing is. But see, here's the problem. Look at the trees only proves that there are trees. Look at the sky only proves that there is a sky. It doesn't prove any of the emotionally comforting bullshit that he wants to attach to it at all. Just because you really want it to be true, that doesn't make it true. You've got to prove it, and you're not even trying. That's the problem. These people aren't even trying. They are letting ignorance and wishful thinking do all of the heavy lifting, and that simply isn't enough. If you want to get from look at the trees, and I don't know why any of them would even try that anymore, because all that ever happens is everybody just laughs at them. But if you have to show that your specific God is a rational answer to your claims, you have to be able to do better than that. But they can't actually do anything that they claim they can do. But I really want it to be true doesn't mean anything. Stop making fools of yourselves. You're not helping your case.
But unfortunately, people distort and corrupt, suppress that knowledge. Now let's look at point number 2.
And we'll do that next time. I'm figuring we'll devote one video to each of his points, depending on how this shakes out. Honestly, I wasn't expecting this to be quite this stupid, but I guess I should have, right? This is how all of them are. Every single last one of them, because all of them are doing the exact same thing. They're not talking to atheists. They are terrified of atheists. We don't pay them, and this is all about making a buck. That's how it's always been. Because these people wouldn't know how to talk to an atheist if their lives depended on it. They have no clue what's going on out there in the real world because they spend all of their time in their own safe spaces where reality dare not intrude. That's why I keep looking for any theist, any apologist, any theologian, anyone who doesn't pull this crap. And I don't think they exist. Nobody has any rational reasons to believe. They just have faith in fee-fees, and if that's all you got to rely on, you're an idiot. This is why religion is such a mess, and why we spend all of our time laughing at these morons, because that's all they are. There's no excuse for that. There's no rationalizing your way around it. These people are mental midgets who are terrified of the real world, because it doesn't make them happy. If your entire life is nothing more than, I've got to be happy all the time, then there's something seriously wrong with you. Grow up. Otherwise, you look like this dipshit, and that is not a good thing. Let's be honest, we know there's no evidence for Christianity. If there was, they would have presented it by now. Now, for their delusions, yes, absolutely. We know these people are nuts, and they continue to prove it every single video that they do. I wish there was better content out there, but there just isn't. Addressing religion is a pathetic waste of time, and the only reason we do it is for a laugh, and hopefully to let the ignorant know what's going on so they don't fall for the scam. So with that in mind, let's go do this once again. Won't that be fun? We're back with Pastor Michael Grant and his laughable evidence for the existence of God. Granted, we should have known this was coming because none of them have anything worth saying. It's all just empty claims and irrational beliefs that make our eyes roll into the back of our heads because it's all that dumb. Sadly, this is the best that they can manage, so let's get back to it and see if we can find anything worth going after, or maybe, most likely, it's the same standard load of horseshit that we see constantly from the religiously deluded. And no, sorry, but that's not going to be fun.
Now let's look at point number 2, that God exists. The second piece of evidence, the moral law within.
I really wish they'd stop with this bullshit because it never ever works. There is no moral law within. Morality isn't objective. That isn't how reality works. Granted, we all know they can't because they're just preaching to the choir and they don't care about demonstrable reality at all. So this is going to fail miserably too. Not that they've got the mental faculties to admit it, because they just don't want to. That's where this all goes wrong, because it's not based on what's demonstrably true, it's based on what they feel. And that doesn't matter, does it? But let's trash this once again, because, hey, I don't really have anything better to do at the moment, right?
Romans 2:14 and 15 says we have God's law written on our heart.
Which means absolutely nothing, Because fuck your stupid book. They are going to have to realize that nobody who isn't already a member of their silly cult cares about their ridiculous book. But of course, they're not talking to us, are they? That makes me wonder why they're bothering at all, since they can't convince a skeptic, and the idiots who already believe, they shouldn't need the constant validation, should they? Except they do, and that's the problem. If you leave these people to their own devices, they'll stop believing in this God bullshit, and the churches will go out of business. And that would be a very good thing. That's what this is all about, after all. So they have to constantly reinforce the blind faith so that the people keep filling the pews on Sunday morning and handing over their money. It is bizarre to me how many theists don't understand what's really going on. Because they're dumb. How could I forget?
You see, everybody knows the difference between right and wrong.
Apparently not. Otherwise, we wouldn't have prisons, would we? There would be no crime. There would be no criminals. So that claim is demonstrably false, and he ought to know better. But he doesn't care, does he? The religious are seemingly incapable of listening to the ridiculous nonsense that comes out of the mouths of their preachers and apologists and actually thinking about it, even remotely critically, because they're just not interested. They just want to believe it, but that doesn't make it true. This is the case for so many of their beliefs, though, isn't it? 10 seconds of considering the proposition just proves that their beliefs are wrong. So why can't they figure it out? Because they don't want to. They've been brainwashed to think that whatever it says in their silly book or is handed down from the idiot in the pulpit, well, that's just gotta be true. And damn it, don't you dare think about it or you're gonna go to hell. These people are obvious morons. I trust that no one is surprised.
Good and evil. You can go into the deepest jungle that has never experienced or had any contact with modern civilization, never been taught all these things about God or religion. They still know there's still some sort of faith or religion there.
Sure, just ask the Paraha. Oh wait, they don't even have a God concept, do they? Because Mikey here is just preaching to ignorant people who know little to nothing about the real world and couldn't care less regardless. This is completely false, but you never get him to admit it because it goes against his financial interests. So let's talk about morality for a second. There isn't really a common set of moral precepts shared by everyone on the planet. I mean, we've already addressed criminals, we could talk about sociopaths, but even among so-called normal people, they do not share a common moral framework across the planet and throughout time. Even with murder. And that's not even a good word to use because the concept that murder, defined as the unlawful killing of people, is legal, that's just an oxymoron, isn't it? However, if you look at countries where killing is legal or socially acceptable, those are actually pretty easy to find. Just look in the Middle East, where killing gay people or heretics or those of other religions, that's just fine. Oh, there might be laws on the books against it, but that doesn't really stop anybody, does it? Or China, for instance, where parents killing female children because they really want boys. That's incredibly common. So this is just nonsense proven by 6 seconds on Google. The second that you run into the idea of honor killings or hell, terrorism, this whole concept has to be discarded. Just because you don't like it, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Learn to deal.
And the people know the difference between right and wrong.
Whose version of right and wrong are you talking about? Because there's a lot of them out there, and you can't point to a common standard, can you? Now, we've done murder to death, haha. So let's move on to something else. Theft. In fact, we have a problem in at least some US cities where the police won't even respond to theft or looting unless the value of the stolen merchandise is over a certain dollar value. You can steal with impunity so long as what you're stealing isn't worth more than about $950 or whatever. So clearly, even if laws are theoretically on the books, nobody's paying attention to the laws. They are letting people get away with crime wholesale. So he's just completely wrong, and I could go to pretty much any crime out there and find plenty of exceptions. Rape? Again, look at a lot of Muslim-majority countries where raping a non-Muslim is pretty much ignored. I could just go on and on and on and on. This idiot is just wrong.
They know that murder is wrong.
Except, as I've already showed, they don't. If they knew it, they wouldn't do it. This is where religious excuse time comes in, because they always have excuses for all the places that they are demonstrably wrong, but they just can't admit it, because they don't care. Oh, but it's your own sinful nature. Then you don't know that it's wrong. Or you don't care that it's wrong. It's a distinction without any difference. If everyone has God's morality written on their hearts, then they shouldn't violate those rules, and if they can and do, then it doesn't matter if it's supposedly written there at all. That's why this whole thing goes absolutely nowhere. It only appeals to the terminally dumb, and that is utterly pathetic.
They know that adultery is wrong. They know that theft is wrong. Now, it's true, people today are taught from a very early age that good is evil and evil is good. So with the indoctrination and the propaganda, today everything is backwards, and we see that evidence all around us.
And the excuses begin immediately, right? Because their views are simply not defensible. It takes 10 seconds to blow them all apart, but they can't deal with the actual reality, so they have to explain poorly why the world that we actually observe does not match up with the empty claims that they make. Because they don't care. This is what happens when you live in a delusional happy land in your head. You look like a complete moron to everyone out here in the real world. He's just trying to justify this to the idiots in the pews because he needs them to keep paying his mortgage. Anyone else is just going to laugh in his face, as they should.
But this is the second proof that God exists, the moral law written on the heart of really all mankind.
And it's the second rule that's been completely blown out of the water within 10 seconds of critical thought. Because, of course it has. These things are not based on rational observation and intelligence. It's all, my book says a thing and Papa needs a new pair of shoes. That is always where the religious go wrong. But they don't care because they're not interested in the truth. Only in, it makes me feel good and I want your money. And that's really, really dumb, isn't it? So, really, Pastor, what else do you have? Anything that's not going to make you look like a complete imbecile? Let me shake my magic 8-ball and see what it says. Yeah, signs point to no. Well, I guess we have to keep watching and see.
The third piece of evidence that God exists, this is the Bible.
Oh, good. My book says a thing. No, dipshit, the Bible is the claim. It is not the evidence for the claim. Of course, he's not talking to us, is he? It's why it's such a complete waste of time going through these religious videos, because every single one of them is the same. Unjustified claims, backed up with nothing more than, I really want it to be true, spouted to stupid people who've got more dollars than brain cells, at least for the moment, before they dump the contents of their wallets into the collection plate in exchange for a dopamine shot in the noggin. We are never going to find a theist with a brain because they are utterly terrified of them. It might get in the way of their comfort, and they sure can't have that, can they?
Well, how is the Bible proof that God exists? Well, the Bible, God's Word, has power.
only over people without the brains or education to know any better. See, you can't just declare that the Bible is God's word without being able to back it up with evidence, and we all know they've got none of that, don't we? This is all faith, no facts and evidence. This reminds me of a discussion that I've been having with Allison over on the blog about free will. All of the people who claim that free will can't exist, those are the ones who need evidence to back up their claims. And they don't have any. It's all, it could be, or it seems to me. And that's not going to be good enough for anybody, at least anybody with any critical sense. Until you can actually support your claims, the only credible answer is, we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, but a lot of people have a problem admitting that, so they just make shit up that appeals to them on an emotional level and declare that it has to be true. And that's exactly what the religious do, and following their lead, that's a very irrational thing to do, isn't it?
It has the power to change hearts. It has the power to change lives.
No, it really doesn't. It's just a book. It has no power whatsoever to do anything on its own. Now, the people who read it, their brains have the power to change things, but that doesn't make the things that are changed actually true. That's where you need independent evidence to support those claims. And funny, people running on pure fifis and faith, they never tend to have that, do they? I don't know, should be a whole lot more common than it is, right? What you want to be true is irrelevant. What is demonstrably true, that's what matters. Being brainwashed into a particular view when you're too young to know any better, that doesn't make the idea any more rational when you grow up. We see this everywhere, and people really need to stop.
The Bible has been proven true again and again and again.
You serious?
Yeah, that's not true. Sure, we can prove that some places are there, some events might have happened, but the core story lacks any kind of corroboratory evidence whatsoever. Prove that there's a God. Prove that Jesus ever existed. Not claim, prove. Provide evidence. You can't, and you know it. Because again, he's just running on faith and fifis and not intelligence, and that's a problem with a lot of people, religious and non-religious alike. It doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter what you like. It doesn't matter what you really wish was true. It matters what you can back up with something that anyone can look at without having to have beliefs about it first. What you can't back up, you don't know. Learn to deal with it.
The Bible has never, even though it has information in it that mankind couldn't possibly know, the Bible has never once been proven false.
Entirely wrong. The Genesis creation story is complete bullshit. It does not match up with the real world, period. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on. The flood never happened. There was no exodus from Egypt. The Canaanite conquest was bullshit. Sodom and Gomorrah were not destroyed by fire and brimstone. Bats aren't birds. There is no firmament. I mean, hell, the mustard seed is not the smallest seed. These are all things that are demonstrably false, and the list from here on out is very, very long. So he's just an idiot, again, running on pure faith and fifis, because he thinks that his wishes and dreams mean more than objective reality. And he is very wrong.
Now people will say, well, the Bible isn't true. We know the Bible isn't true because of evolution. We know evolution is true. No, you don't.
Yes, we do. Because we're looking at the evidence, and you are clearly not. This is where I figure things are going to get painfully stupid. More stupid, I mean, because holy crap, this whole thing has been dumb. But when they start talking about science, that's when you know they're completely doomed. They have no clue what's going on in reality because they are terrified of reality. That's why they embrace their silly book, because it provides a more comforting narrative that they can believe without proof, and that is positively stupid. So let's watch him make a complete fool of himself, because we all know that's what's going to happen.
Evolution is a theory, right? The theory of evolution.
You're an idiot. How can these people be this stupid? In science, a theory is a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world based on a body of facts that have been repeatedly confirmed through observation and experimentation. So, I was right. He did make a fool of himself. Not that it was hard to guess, because that's all he's been doing this entire video, and that's all he will do until it ends. In fact, I can predict right now that the next video that I write, and I don't even know what it is yet, that content creator will just embarrass themselves too. I don't even have to guess anymore. It's just blatantly obvious.
Besides, nobody has ever observed it happening.
Of course we have! Antibiotic resistance in bacteria, pesticide resistance in insects, the peppered moth in England, finches in the Galapagos. I mean, the list is very, very long. So this is complete bullshit by a complete bullshit artist. Ignorance is not a good look, Pastor. Maybe do something about it. It could only help your credibility.
You cannot test it. It's not even really science. It's a theory.
You are an idiot. And this is why I figure he turned off ratings on this video, because he'd get completely trashed. Anyone who has to hide from public opinion has serious problems, and I think the religious know it. You don't see me disabling comments or ratings on any of my videos, do you? Vote what you want, say what you want. I approve pretty much everyone. Not since the channel started, in fact, have I ever done that. If you want to downvote me, go right ahead, knock yourself out. You can comment whatever you want to comment, so long as it isn't some racist screed or whatever, because I don't censor. Never have, never will. I even respond to the overwhelming majority of commenters. Say that to the religious and they'll pass out. Because this guy responded to 2 people that I can see, and then he gave up. Because he was just getting his ass handed to him.
And again, you have to be taught that. You have to be taught these things.
You know, like Christianity. Nobody pops out of the womb believing in any gods. Is he even listening to himself? I really don't think that he is. At least, he's not thinking about any of it intelligently. And that seems to be a problem that the religious have, right? Lots of strong convictions, zero evidence, and even less critical thought. They just really like the idea, and that will never be enough. That's why you get so many ignorant fucks on the internet making complete fools of themselves and embarrassing their religions, because really, what more can we expect? That's why they're dying. Because they deserve it.
And this is how the devil works, to lure people away from the truth.
Oh look, more excuses! We're falling apart, but we can blame this imaginary evil figure that we just made up because it can't be our fault, can it? These people really are this dumb. This guy really has nothing going on in his head. And he's leading a bunch of other imbeciles who, likewise, have nothing at all going on upstairs. This is the dumb leading the dumb, and it's always worked that way, hasn't it? You people need to grow the hell up. Trust me, it's better out here in reality than it is in your childish little fantasy land.
So there's all sorts of teachers, as we talk about, who try to blend, well, okay, there is a God, but he used evolution, and then you just have a mixture of truth and error today.
As opposed to all error the way that you do it. Because your beliefs are complete bullshit, entirely indefensible, evidentially unjustified, rationally absurd, but they are emotionally comforting, so I guess you've got that. Except that's just childish. But then again, these are immature children just living in adult bodies because they're too dumb and deluded to grow the hell up and just deal. we should not be pretending otherwise. We should stop being nice to these morons. The only response any of this should ever get is laughter.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
I wouldn't say if you could actually reason with these morons, but you can't. So the only thing that you can really do is publicly embarrass them. Let them know just how pathetic they are. If enough people do this, either they're going to stop making fools of themselves in public, or they're going to retreat and hide, and that's not really a bad option either. At least they'll stop harming society, and ultimately I think that has to be our goal.
And it's differing degrees of unbelief. But the Bible, here's the point, you have natural revelation, the starry skies above, that can tell you there is a God, but you need special revelation, the Bible. You need special revelation to know exactly who this God is and what he wants us to do.
Funny, can't any religion say that? And in fact, they all do. My book says a thing doesn't matter until you prove that your book is actually true. And you're not even trying to do that. And I guess nobody else is either, so you're not really in a worse place than any other religion is. You're just not any better than any of the other groups of idiots. Because this is all just bald rationalizations that would never convince a skeptic, but they're too terrified of skeptics and running away to hide in their safe spaces, so I guess we really shouldn't be that surprised. This is where the religious have all of the problems, because just saying, here's what I believe, means absolutely nothing to anyone with a brain. But they don't like people with brains because we don't fill their collection plates. What you believe is irrelevant unless you can prove that what you believe is true, and they're not remotely interested in that, are they?
And what God wants us to do is to believe in his only begotten Son, the Lord Jesus Christ.
Because you say so, or because your book says so, or because the anonymous people who wrote your book, whoever the fuck they were, they said so. Is this supposed to impress anyone? Because it sure doesn't impress me. Then again, I'm not their target audience. I am not the person likely to get down on my knees and pull out my wallet, and therefore they couldn't care less about me. Because we can never forget what this is really about. Money, influence, power, stuff like that. And they're not going to get that from me, so they don't care if I believe it or not. Because these people are just assholes.
So the gospel, the word of God, has the power to change lives.
It doesn't, though. I've already been through that. Just because you really like what a silly book says, that doesn't make any of it true. And let's be honest, they couldn't care less, could they? Now, this is arbitrarily where I figure we should stop for the week. He might be about to get into his next point. I don't really know, but this seems like a pretty natural stopping point, and it'll all work out for the SUPERCUT fans eventually regardless. So what do you think? Is he getting any better, or is he just getting worse? This is the real problem with most moderate forms of Christianity dying, because you get stuck with a load of this garbage over and over again, because the only ones dumb enough to keep doing it are the lunatics without an education. And that's why laughing at them is probably the only thing that will work, because these people wouldn't know critical thinking if it bit them in the ass. I'd be happy to reason with these people if they were capable, but so few of them ever are. If you watch any of the call-in shows, you know just how dumb most of the people who call in can be, and I don't know that it's even worth my time to engage with any of them. It's like talking to a brick wall, except the bricks have a higher IQ than the religious do. So I guess we're going to just circle around next week and wrap this up, hopefully, and I'm hoping there's going to be something better at the end. I wouldn't really be holding my breath or anything, because I think we all know that there's nothing rational on the horizon, but hey, thinking happy thoughts is about all that keeps us going anymore, right? And that's kind of sad, isn't it? But regardless, I'll catch you all next time. Is there evidence for Christian delusion? Absolutely there is. And Muslim delusion and Hindu delusion. The delusion is spread far and wide. Why is that? Maybe we'll get some answers today. I don't know. Stay tuned. Let's finish up Pastor Michael Grant's Is There Evidence for the Existence of God video. And the answer so far has been clearly no, of course not. Because these people don't know what evidence is, nor what would convince a skeptic, but then again, he's not making this video for a skeptic, is he? He's only doing it to encourage the already delusional idiots in his congregation to keep giving him money. Because that's what this is always about. Exchange indefensible lies for cold hard cash. Welcome to religion. So let's see if he can turn this around in the last part. I don't think I'd be holding my breath on that, but hey, let's go and see. Because pigs might fly out of my ass too, right?
Just the fact, fulfilled prophecy alone, fulfilled prophecy concerning the person and work of Christ, that in and of itself, predicting events hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years in advance, that is proof that God exists and he has given us his word.
Seriously, why do they keep going with this ridiculous prophecy nonsense? There is not one single demonstrably fulfilled prophecy anywhere in the Bible, or let's be honest, any other book out there. All you've got are vague claims reinterpreted by later writers because they wanted to look like their current proclamations were foretold. First off, the overwhelming majority of supposed prophecies in the Old Testament were never intended as prophecies in the first place. They have to be ripped completely out of context to be seen that way at all. Secondly, we really can't prove that the events that supposedly fulfilled the prophecy ever happened as described at all. We've got no independent evidence that someone named Jesus was born in the town of Bethlehem, and the prophecy being referenced, it wasn't talking about a town to begin with, but a people group. In other words, they have to lie, and in a time where the overwhelming majority of people were illiterate and couldn't go back to the Jewish scriptures to find out for themselves if any of it was actually true, the anonymous authors of much of the Old Testament were just relying on people's desire to believe and not to verify that any of it was actually true. Because that's exactly how religion works, right? Because these people are really, really dumb.
It's evidence.
No, it's nothing remotely of the sort. You don't just get to say that and pretend that it's true. You have to walk us through the steps of how you've verified any of it, and we all know that you can't do it. Because biblical scholars, actual scholars and not just religious shills, will tell you that none of this is at all defensible. The second that you set faith aside, the whole thing comes tumbling down like a house of cards because it isn't actually true. That's why the religiotards have to invent things like devil meanings and crap like that, because they just really wish it was true, and their wishes and dreams mean a whole lot more to them than actual reality. They hate actual reality. They're terrified of actual reality. They just desperately want to believe, and that's just stupid.
Has been said that the Bible is a book that man would not write if he could, and he could not write it if he would.
That's a lie, though. It's based on all of the interpretations and blind faith that you've had shoved into your head against your will. Take that away, and the Bible is nothing special at all. The Lord of the Rings is an objectively better series of books than the Bible is. Probably Harry Potter is, too. If you eject demonstrable reality from your fantasy story, it's simple. Oh, but there are real places in there. So? Big deal. There's real places in the Harry Potter books. Hell, I've written books like that. Years ago, I did a trilogy that happened in and around Phoenix, Arizona, as well as Las Vegas and a couple of other places. Not only is Phoenix a real place, but I referenced actual streets and in fact actual houses that really existed, at least at the time that I was writing it. Google Maps gives you a lot of really good information. That does not make zombies real, though. So the whole idea is absolutely ridiculous, but then again, look at who we're talking about.
Meaning, even if man had that supernatural knowledge,
there's no evidence at all for anything supernatural. Seriously, get a grip. The supernatural, at least so far as we can tell, is just wishes and dreams and I really want it to be true. But there's nothing actually there, at least not that anyone can demonstrably point to. It, as I said before, is all interpretation run through a particular religious lens, and that means absolutely nothing in reality. How can these people continue to make such complete fools of themselves all the time? I don't know, you tell me.
He would not write a book that condemns himself, but even if a man would write a book that condemns himself, he doesn't have that knowledge.
Seriously, listen to yourself. People absolutely can and have written books that condemn humanity because they're trying to sell a supposed solution to the gullible people out there who really want to believe it. The people who write the books tend to make a bunch of money and go on talk shows and podcasts and shit like that. They tend to get a following, at least if they do it well, and none of it has to be true at all, because you can look at people who write fiction who do the exact same thing. This is what religion is, after all. It's just fiction. It's the clergy class benefiting from the stupidity of their followers because it's simple to bullshit an idiot and make off with their ill-gotten gains. And even if the people who wrote the books really believed it, that doesn't make any of it true. There are plenty of people in the world that abjectly hate themselves and others. It's not hard to play on that and make a religion out of it. Hell, the extremes of the political spectrum, they've been doing that for a very long time. Humans are evil and they deserve to go to hell. All those idiots are on one side, and the humans are evil and they should just go extinct and save the planet. Those morons are on the other. There's a lot of political activist groups out there that are clearly playing that card like PETA. I mean, hell, you've got the voluntary human extinction movement out there, started by a fanatical environmental activist. Those things fall on one specific end of the political spectrum, don't they? But then again, stuff that stupid falls on the other end as well. I mean, seriously, how dumb can this idiot get?
That knowledge had to be given to us through the prophets and the apostles, through special revelation. But again, the Bible is proof that God exists.
It's only proof that you're an ignorant imbecile. And remember, this is someone who derives most or all of his income through telling these ridiculous stories to the idiots in the pews and having them empty their wallets into the collection plate. There is a distinct profit motive there, whether he's willing to admit it or not. This is why I am not at all impressed with the preachers and the apologists of the religious world, because they're all like this. You don't tend to see many, and I would say any, who aren't collecting cash from the morons in the audience, because this is all just a scam. Even for the ones who really believe it, and it's really hard to tell which ones those are, they are still financially benefiting from telling these cockamamie stories to the idiots that are following them around, and they all behave as if they know what they're doing because their activities are demonstrably structured to maximize giving. None of these lunatics are relying on God to provide. I might actually have a little respect if they did. I mean, very little, but still. But no, this is just a con job end to end, and they don't pretend otherwise. They won't call it that because that'll just harm their earning potential, but that's still exactly what's going on. They offer nothing of any demonstrable substance in exchange for money that is strongly encouraged through impotent threats that they simply cannot justify. Put your money in the plate or you're going to hell. Yeah, fuck you. Your services are specifically structured to encourage maximum giving, and it's all just psychological manipulation. These are con men. Let's not pretend otherwise.
Jesus said in John 6:63, "It is the Spirit who gives life, and the flesh profits nothing."
And you notice that he's just reading this, right? He doesn't even have the verse memorized. He's reading it off a screen, probably, if you watch his eyes, maybe out of a Bible, although with the camera where it is, that might be a little hard to do and not have it seen, but I can really go either way. I wasn't paying a lot of attention earlier on in the video, but it's blatantly obvious that he's doing it right now. Let's keep an eye on that moving forward, although we've only got about a minute and a half of video left, so who the hell knows? How can this guy not actually know his own Bible? Back when I was religious, my pastor could quote the whole thing from memory, and I was almost at that point myself. But then again, we probably took it a lot more seriously than this jackass does, right?
The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life. The words of Scripture are spiritual words. They have the power to give life.
Because my book says a thing. Who cares? I mean, we all know he's not talking to us, but once again, who else but the non-religious is going to be watching a video on the evidence for God? Why would you be doing this for people who already believe this bullshit on faith? Because this is, once again, the scam. You pretend to be talking to people that would laugh in your face if you were, and the comments on this video prove that. And he's turned off ratings so nobody can see how many people disagree with him, but you pretend to be addressing non-believers while you're really only trying to reinforce the beliefs of your existing flock because that's all you really care about, right? And it's not working since for a channel with 30,000 subscribers, only 1,000 people have bothered to even watch this thing. And that's in 5 months, as of the time that I'm writing this. Who the hell knows what it's going to be by the time this actually hits the channel? If you want to go and look and report back, feel free. So, like every other apologist out there, he is not successful. He's not reaching anyone, and it's only done as a way to keep the pew idiots paying into the collection plate because that's how he makes a buck. Look at all the good work he's doing. No, he's just a moron, and anyone who follows him deserves to get scammed. This is ridiculously easy to see if you even bother to try.
That's why we need special revelation. So when a person hears the preaching of God's word, when they hear the gospel, that God by his grace has sent his Son to forgive us of our sin through belief in the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, that has the power to change hearts.
But you have no evidence for any of that. That's just your own personal interpretation because it helps your bottom line. He's just making claims about all the stuff that's supposedly going on, but he can't back any of it up, can he? He doesn't even try. None of them do, which is why My Book Says a Thing is so popular. But that doesn't prove that the book is right, does it? You have to already take that part on faith. And if you don't, if you expect actual corroboratory evidence and support, then you're never going to get there because that kind of support simply doesn't exist. Not that he cares, because he's got tons of gullible morons on the line providing the life that he'd like to continue being accustomed to because he's a fucking con man. I don't see a lot of pastors going hungry, at least in semi-affluent areas, do you? No, they tend to be driving Mercedes and living in big houses and having a bunch of kids, all paid for by the pew monkeys. What a scam, right? Because that's all it is.
Has the power to change lives. And all the changed lives all over the world, that is just more evidence.
And that goes for lots of different religions. Is it evidence that those gods are real too? Somehow I doubt that he'd agree. Scientologists say that their lives get better because they are a member of the church. Does that make Xenu real? Does that make body thetans exist? Well, of course not. Look at how well Tom Cruise is doing. That must prove that Scientology is the one true religion, right? But that's not how any of this works. People making claims because their churches encourage them to do so only proves that the people are dumb and gullible. Because there are tons of Christians out there who are absolutely miserable. In fact, Christianity encourages that because that's what keeps them coming back to the church and forking over their hard-earned cash. You're a miserable sinner, so shut up, sit down, and open your wallet. Your pastor needs a new swimming pool. And of course, the sunk cost fallacy means that the believers are more likely to claim success because they've already put in a lot of time, money, and effort into it, and they don't want to pretend that they've wasted their time. I bet absolutely none of this is remotely demonstrable. Show us how the church or your beliefs or your book or whatever have objectively made your life better. They can't do it. It's all just claims and wishful thinking, but it still makes money for the clergy, right? Because it's all just a scam.
And it's all through the Word of God and through the Spirit of God.
And that's just unsubstantiated bullshit. You have no evidence for any of that, but these people, as I've said before, tend to be very insular. They have no idea what's really going on outside of the doors of their church. It's just a safe space where they can hide from reality and tell each other whatever comforting stories they like, because they don't actually care about the truth. They don't know that in India, say, people in a Hindu temple, they're going to do the exact same things that they are and telling the exact same kinds of stories with the names of their gods swapped in, and it means no more when they do it than when you do. This is just people lying to themselves for comfort, and it's something that people have done since time immemorial. It's also kind of stupid. You can't hide from reality and pretend that it's not there. The people who are getting thrown out of their homes because they don't pay the mortgage, it doesn't matter how much you stare at the sky and beg your imaginary friend for help. Help only comes when you get off your knees and get to work. Now, I just responded to someone over on Facebook on a similar but non-religious topic about how people these days tend to be very self-entitled. They think that they deserve success, but they don't actually want to put in the work. They don't want to have realistic expectations. That's one reason the whole prosperity gospel thing is so popular. Or remember The Secret? That thing? Yeah, that was popular for a while too. Wish real hard and all your dreams will come true. Except that's not how that works. So people come up with all kinds of excuses for why they're not getting what they think they're owed, and all of it is bullshit. Every last bit of it. You are not owed anything. You need to get off your ass and earn it. You need to work your butt off, and life isn't fair. Welcome to the real world. Learn to deal.
So in conclusion, the only question is not, is there any evidence?
Because there's not. These are all just empty claims made without any evidential support because you really wish it was true. But that's not how evidence works. Evidence needs to be objectively demonstrable without needing to be filtered through the religious lens. But I really want God to be real. So what? But I really want Krishna to be real. Big deal. Nobody cares. The only thing that matters is if they are actually real, and if we can actually discover them intellectually. If not, you're just wasting everyone's time. But you're not talking to us anyway because you're just a scam artist. Lying for the Lord is your job. And it's not a respectable job, is it? Or at least it shouldn't be. Granted, there are a lot of really dumb people out there standing in line to get fleeced, so you'll probably be okay for a little while longer before the whole thing collapses. But that day is coming soon. Churches are going out of business left and right. Hopefully, yours is next. Couldn't happen to a bigger douchebag. Fuck off.
Because there is evidence. There's evidence all around us.
No, there isn't. All you've got is claims and bald rationalizations and, hey, look over there. But that's not evidence because you neither know what evidence is, nor do you care. Because this has never been about truth, it's all about money. It's about scamming the gullible out of their hard-earned cash because you have no moral center. This is really why we see so many preachers involved in child molestation or in abusing their parishioners or whatever. Because these people, they don't know right from wrong. They're just playing a part and seeing what they can get away with. So I figured, why not see if this guy has been accused of anything? Because we know a lot of them have. I just limited it to sexual abuse, but while I came up with a ton of other pastors who were accused of sexual misconduct, especially with minors, I couldn't find any specifically for this guy in particular. Maybe he's been doing other things and maybe he just hasn't gotten caught yet. I don't know. I'm not saying that he's actually a criminal, but there tends to be a lot of criminals among the religious ranks, don't there? It's enlightening to just search Google for pastor and sexual abuse and just watch thousands and thousands and thousands of stories roll by. These people aren't holy. They're assholes. And that's all they've ever been.
The only question is, do you believe it?
Nope, because you still have nothing at all but empty claims. You don't know what evidence is. You don't care if you can convince a non-believer, because this isn't about non-believers at all. This is about comforting the brainless sheep in the pews on their way to slaughter. Because nobody should believe this. Nobody should be this dumb. If I could have just one wish, it would be to make all of humanity rational and skeptical, and the moment that that happened, religion would go away instantly. So would virtually all of the political shenanigans that we see going on. In fact, I have a feeling that every major highway on the planet would be lined with the corpses of politicians that have been hung for cause. Probably right next to all the clergy idiots who've been caught with their hands in the cookie jar or down the pants of a kid. We need to throw off all of this ridiculous wishful thinking nonsense and get on to accepting and dealing with actual reality. Because wouldn't that be nice?
The Bible says in Romans 10:17, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And when you hear, that is when these words come true. I'll end with this.
No, we're going to end right now because I'm really tired of your stupid Bible verses. They don't mean anything. Grow up and learn to deal with it. But this whole thing is really dumb, isn't it? He has no evidence. He has no facts. He only has faith in fifis, and that is positively dumb. But hey, he makes money out of it, and that's all he cares about, because that's all any of them care about when you get right down to it. You won't find a whole lot of preachers doing this for free. You know, people who have a regular day job and do this for nothing on the weekends. That's pretty rare, and while I can't really respect doing it at all, I respect those people a hell of a lot more than I do anybody like Pastor Mike here. Preaching to dumb people is nothing to be proud of. But what more do they have? I don't know. If you think you do, let me know down in the comments and we can talk, because these people are just scam artists in sheep's clothing. Even if they're not necessarily actively aware of what they're doing, that's still what they're doing. Some of them are victims that are just stumping for the higher-ups, but most of them, they know exactly what they're doing, taking advantage of the gullible and delusional, and that is not a good thing. So this is another idiot theist that we can just check off the list, but if you know of any more, hopefully smarter ones, by all means let me know. This is not impressive at all, but I don't think we ever really expected it to be, did we? Because this is all religion is, a con by morally questionable people who are taking advantage of you if you're dumb enough to sit in the pews. And I don't think we're really surprised by that at all.